What started with targeted airstrikes has absolutely exploded into a crisis that's having an impact all around the world. So let's get right into it and break down how this regional war is sending some serious shockwaves through the entire global economy. Okay, this number right here, this is what has markets, well, frankly, terrified. Analysts are warning that the price of oil could rocket past $180 a barrel if this thing keeps escalating. And a price like that, yeah, that could easily trigger a global recession. And here's the bottom line. What's happening in the Middle East is no longer some distant headline you can just scroll past. It has very real, very direct consequences for the price you pay for gas, for our supply chains, and even for the technology we all depend on every single day. So the first thing we really need to understand is how this conflict just spilled over its borders so fast, morphing from a military fight into a full-blown economic one. This quote, it just nails the strategic shift perfectly. When the direct military strikes didn't deliver a quick, decisive victory, the battlefield got a whole lot bigger. It expanded to the world's most critical economic choke points. And get this, 1,000. At the peak of this crisis, that's how many ships were just stranded in the Strait of Hormuz. It's a powerful picture of global trade literally grinding to a halt. Now, to really get a handle on the situation today, we've got to rewind the clock just a little bit to see how this whole thing kicked off only a few weeks ago. And that's the big question, right? How did we get here? Well, it wasn't just one single event. It was a rapid-fire series of escalations that just kept pushing the situation closer and closer to the edge. So, it all really began on February 28th, 2026. A massive, coordinated wave of U.S. and Israeli airstrikes hit targets deep inside Iran. They were going after military infrastructure, key leaders, you name it. Iran's response was almost immediate, and from that moment on, the whole conflict just spiraled outward really, really fast. And this brings us to the war's new battlefield. And believe me, it isn't land or sea or air. It's the world's energy supply. You see, both sides quickly figured out that, yeah, hitting military targets is one thing, but if you really want to inflict a different kind of pain, a more widespread pain, you hit the infrastructure that powers the entire world economy. And what's so fascinating here is you can see this tit-for-tat chain reaction playing out. An Israeli strike hits Iran's massive South Pars gas field, knocking out something like 12% of its production. So Iran retaliates, hitting energy facilities across the Gulf in places like Qatar and the UAE, forcing their refineries and plants to shut down. And the result? You can see it right here. It was immediate, and it was brutal. Before the war, oil was sitting around $85 a barrel. It shot past 100 almost overnight, and like we said, the real fear is that it could more than double from where it started. But this is about so much more than the price at the pump. Those attacks on Qatar's gas infrastructure, they also massively disrupted the world's supply of helium. And you might be thinking, helium, so what? Well, it turns out helium is absolutely essential for making semiconductors, for MRI machines in our hospitals, and for the entire AI and tech industry. It's a huge deal. So while all this economic warfare is raging, the conventional military fight is still escalating too, and it's becoming more daring and, frankly, a lot more dangerous. So you've got thousands of U.S. and Israeli strikes hammering Iran. But Iran is proving it has some serious reach of its own. I mean, they attempted an incredibly ambitious long-range missile strike on a military base 4,000 kilometers away, and they're continuing to hit U.S. forces all over the region. Now, despite the sheer scale of the attacks on Iran, intelligence reports are suggesting that the main goal, regime change, hasn't happened. In fact, it looks like the exact opposite might be occurring, with power becoming even more concentrated within the hardline Revolutionary Guard. And of course, behind all of these strategic moves and all these economic numbers, there is a devastating human cost that is just growing by the day. We're seeing reports of over 1,300 deaths in Iran, hundreds more in Lebanon, and civilian casualties climbing across the entire region. Behind every one of these figures are families and communities just torn apart. And we have to remember, these numbers are incredibly hard to verify and are almost certainly much higher than what's being reported. So let's be crystal clear. This is not a two-sided conflict anymore, not by a long shot. Hezbollah is deeply involved in Lebanon, and Iran has made it plain that any country in the Gulf that hosts U.S. forces could be a target.
That threat is pulling the entire region into this fight, turning what was a direct confrontation into a totally volatile multi-front war.
So, the big question is, where does all this go from here? Right now, analysts are basically sketching out 3 possible scenarios for what could happen next.
Okay, so path number 1 is just continued escalation, a full-blown regional war that pulls in even more countries. The second possibility is a long, grinding stalemate, with limited strikes but no clear winner. And the third option, the one the world is hoping for, is a negotiated pause, forced by intense global economic pressure. The problem is, right now, neither side seems ready to back down.
And that really leaves us with the ultimate question. This conflict is pushing the global economy toward a breaking point. As supply chains keep snapping and prices keep soaring, the real unknown is which will break first, the conflict itself or the world's ability to tolerate the pain it's causing. That's the critical question facing all of us right now.